Yeah, looks like we're live, Councillor Fitzgerald, so whenever you're ready.
I think if you just pause 1 minute, Pippa, it's still processing at my end.
No, that's all right. It looks like it's processing, but it does start streaming straight away.
Okay. Yep, so we've got all that now.
Thank you, the backroom team. Good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock and welcome to today's meeting of the Shareholder Cabinet Subcommittee. I'd like to start by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting through the Council's YouTube channel. Due to government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is taking place remotely in accordance with legislation. In order for this meeting to run smoothly, I ask several things from members. Firstly, that you keep your video camera switched on at all times, your microphone muted, except when you're invited to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any member wishing to ask questions or make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function in the participant screen, and you'll find that with the blue hand at the bottom of the page. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, make your comment or question, and then mute yourself again. Should we run into technical difficulties or problems, I'll declare an adjournment of the meeting while the fault is addressed, and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible, the meeting will be adjourned until such a time as it can be reconvened. If your connection fails during the meeting and you are unable to reconnect, one of the Democratic Services teams will contact you. Finally, I would remind members that all virtual meetings are recorded. Before we move to the first item, we'll begin by calling the names of all Shareholder Cabinet Committee members present today to establish that you are actually here. Pippa, if you'd like to take over from that point, please.
Thank you. So, Councillor Fitzgerald, you're present?
Yes, I am still present.
Dear, thank you. Councillor Allen?
In attendance.
Thank you. Councillor Sereste?
Here.
Thank you. We've just had apologies from Councillor Seaton. He's going to be a little bit late, so he'll be joining us later. And we have apologies from Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Pippa. So that was item 1 as well there. So item 2 would be declarations of interest. If anybody has any declarations to declare, let's do so now at this point. I don't see any hands being indicated or members speaking. So if we can move on to item 3 then this morning, folks, which is the minutes of the meeting held, my golly, it seems so long ago, on the 2nd of March, when we all last met in person, 2020. So I hope everybody's had a chance to look through those, and if they're an accurate record, we can propose and second them for recommendation to Cabinet for final approval. If everybody's happy, does somebody want to give me a first and a seconder? Steve, Marco? Yeah, Steve is indicating he'll nominate those.
Happy to do that, Chair.
Sure. Okay, so we're only just approving those to go forward to Cabinet for final approval. Seems a bit of a strange way to do it, but that's the way it's done. Okay, so moving on then, we have the review of the vivacity transmission arrangements, which I believe might be Steve Cox, item 4. I could be completely wrong about that, because I'd have to just scroll down to my papers. Just bear with me a second. I'm using 2 methods here, folks. I'm using a laptop and a set of, is it you, Pete, or is it Steve?
Yes, me.
Okay, so just let me get to the item in the agenda here. Because with this modern technology now, we have to have several devices. I hasten to add all my own personal property. So we are indeed on item number 4 from Service Director Communities and Partnerships. That's what threw me. So in fact, I was expecting Adrian Chapman, not yourself. But anyway, fire away, Pete.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And can I apologise for the absence of Adrian? He's on holiday at the moment. He's not back till Monday. So I'll give the update on this report and happy to answer questions. I'm part of a 3-person team that's looking at the overall transition, the other 2 being Adrian and Amanda Askham. This report sets out the progress made at Writing, which was 2 weeks ago, in relation to the transition of services from Vivacity to the City Council. I'll update at the end on the present position. As a summary, the council entered into a funding management agreement on in May 2010 for the transfer and delivery of culture and leisure services to Vivacity. On the 18th of June this year, Vivacity served a 90-day notice of termination of the agreement, citing the Coronavirus Act 2020 constituted a force majeure, which had persisted for more than 90 days, preventing performance of services. As per the writing in this report, services would cease on the 16th of September, and we would take over, or have to take over, as the council on the 17th. Arts, Culture and Heritage Services will transfer to a trust of the City College Peterborough. Sports and Leisure will transfer to Peterborough Limited. All Vivacity staff will transfer under 2P regulations, although at the point of transfer, a number will still be on the furlough schemes and those can continue. 461 and 471 set out what will be opened and when. A number of the services are open now, a number will open over the period. We will need to run services for at least a year to fully understand the costs and drivers of those services. Coronavirus is having a major impact on this. It's an issue for the whole sector in terms of what are the income levels because of social distancing and how is that affecting the business plans in these areas. There's been significant consultation with staff, unions, Sport England, the Arts Council, Historic England, and more will be done over the coming weeks with friends groups, etc., and members. The financial implications, and I can say a lot on this one, are not 100% clear at the moment, given the social distancing legislation now in place. In a lot of cases, you know, as I give an example, swimming pools, I swam in one of my local pools last week, it's down to 40 people. That obviously has a big issue on it, on income. But conversations, I had one with MHCLG last Wednesday, have put us in touch with the Arts Council and Sport England in terms of looking at funding and factoring that into what's going on at the national level. Just as an aside, in terms of looking at services in overall terms, significant number of council-run leisure services that are done by third parties are not open at the moment across the country. Since the writing of this report, we had a series of negotiations over the last 2 weeks with Vivacity, and the date of transfer has moved now from the evening of the 16th, 17th to the 30th of September, 1st of October. There's been confirmation that Lost World will transfer to Neem Park Trust, and significant work is underway now to make sure that all the transfers are as smooth as possible, doing things like doing all the transfer agreements for grants and other things to the various granting bodies. There is now a plan for the Key Theatre to reopen over the winter period, which is going through its final review sessions. Happy to take questions.
I don't see any hands up, which would be remarkable if Steve doesn't have a question. There he goes. Quick off the draw. Councillor Allen, your question then, please.
You're on mute, Steve.
That's one of those things that's floating around. You're on mute. Your video's not switched on. Right, I am now on camera and with a microphone. And thank you, Peter. That overview was virtually what I had in my conversation with Adrian before we both departed on holiday. I've now returned, and I just wonder if you can give me an update whether anything has transpired with regard to Bushfield and the availability of the changing rooms and all-weather pitch, because I have had lots of people approaching me on that. And Adrian and I were in conversation about the urgency of getting those open for the football season. Do you know where we are with that provision, please?
Councillor Allen, I don't have an update on that one. It's not one that's passed past me in the last week, so I'll check on that and respond to the whole committee after the meeting.
Great, thank you.
I don't see anything else. Steve, you want to drop your hand? That'd be fine. Marco hasn't got his hand up, or that's it. So I probably just want to just check a couple of things then, Pete, really. I was aware of some discussion about the council agreeing an asset transfer in terms of, you know, fixtures and fittings, for want of a better word, between ourselves and Vivacity. So has that concluded? Has that been agreed, by the way, as we stand today? And was that the reason for the further 2 weeks? Just if you want to deal with that point first, or points, 2 points.
Yes, no, so certainly there is an asset transfer. So as part of the process, we looked at all the Vivacity assets. And any of the transfer that we've done or amounts that have been agreed are as per the funding management agreement. So basically, that's the set of rules by which we are undertaking the transaction from them back to us. We had valuations done of the sporting equipment by a third-party company.
Because to me, it would seem rather perverse that we, the council, probably at the time gifted Vivacity lock, stock and barrel the assets in place at the time of transfer, only then for Vivacity to charge us for replacement equipment that would be in situ now, particularly that in essence we are taking on the same responsibilities, and I believe Vivacity's Memonarts or charitable objectives say that they should transfer any cash or anything else remaining into a successor. And given the council's financial position, it would worry me slightly if there was an unnecessary claim against the council to put money into Vivacity, which may be subsumed into another charity at our expense. I just find that slightly perverse. I don't know if you agree with that.
Councillor Fitzgerald, I understand your sentiments, and that's why we are having to follow the funding management agreement to the letter. And there are, as with any close down of any set of services, sometimes differences of opinion, and we're ironing out those differences of opinion at the moment.
No, I get that. I know you're on it. I'm coming at it from a principle point of view. It just seems to me that, you know, why would you want to do that when we are, because this would be cash out of the council to go into a charity that is no longer continuing, yet we are continuing the services of that charity, if you see what I mean. It just seems very odd. And why has there been a delay of 2 weeks, Peter?
Well, basically, it's for a number of reasons, but it's for smoothness of transfer. If we'd have done it halfway through the month, there'd have been the need for 2 sets of pay slips for all the staff, which is a mess to begin with for the staff. It's much easier if we have an end of month transfer, both for HMRC and revenue purposes. And, you know, you have to remember we employ something like 500 staff across sport and leisure.
Yeah, that's fine. That would be a justifiable reason on its own in terms of, from a bookkeeping point of view, it's easier to end the month. I understand that. I know that Councillor Allen will share the sentiments of my next concern, and whether or not, and I know we touched on it before, that I think members will need to see some evidence at some point of what we've done here is going to be beneficial in the long run to the council. Both from a service delivery point of view and indeed from a finance point of view, because the decision to terminate the contract, of course, was taken by Vivacity. We all know that, and primarily for COVID reasons. However, there's some uncertainty about, and I'll use the word, quote, whether it's the right thing to do. And I think a number of members across the whole council will be wanting answers fairly quickly about the financial advantages and service delivery advantages from the actions that we've taken with Vivacity. And I note in the report it does make reference to temporary and a review on a quarterly basis, but that might take some time to gather. But I wouldn't want to get into a situation where we've done something and it's actually costing us more money.
Councillor Fitzgerald, as the Director of Finance, I can agree with those sentiments exactly, and that's why we're having ongoing discussions with the Arts Council, Sport England, MHCLG, to make sure we understand all the funding streams that we can use, because you're quite right, the COVID restrictions in terms of entrance to establishments are quite significantly curtailing income in these 2 service areas. I don't think anyone across the country at the moment quite understands how it is affecting things, and that's why we need to get up and running data quite quickly, because we've got to make decisions in the right way.
I note also you talked about Lost World there, and without drilling into the detail of the whys and wherefores, that was obviously when Vivacity was going forward, that was much lauded as a cash generating project, which seems now to have gone somewhere else, which to me, I should ask the question, did we give due consideration to taking that in to Aragon, Peterborough Limited? And we've dismissed it because I don't think there's been any discussion within members about it, certainly not within Cabinet. And I don't know whether Councillor Allen would know any more. But if that was a conscious decision again, and it turns out to be very successful. So on the one hand, I'm telling you, I hope it's not, but I hope it is. And if it is, why didn't we take it? Just a flag. If you know anything about it, great.
Yeah, no, so Lost World is something that's outside the FMA, and we actually lent
No,
money.
Pete, I'm sorry, I do understand that, but the point is that, you know, given our partnership arrangements with Vivacity, I would have thought we'd had first pickings in terms of, rather than it going to a third party. That's my question.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure where the original decision was made. I know there were a number of discussions over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I'll get you the chapter and verse on the decision process.
I'm just flagging up. So if this thing's a roaring success, okay, and it's making money hand over fist, I'll be going, well, why didn't we take that? I don't understand, you know, considering that we're supposed to be in a smooth transition period with one of our partners. I just find it very odd, that's all, at this stage of the game. But I don't know the background. I don't know the reasoning. If it was, it's a risk and we didn't want to take it, Councillor, fine, I understand that. But anyway, one for another day. I don't know if Steve and Marco agree with that. But yeah, so.
Can I come in, please, Councillor Fitzgerald?
Yeah, go on, Steve.
Yeah, I do share your interest in the Lost World, but it was outside the FMA, as I understand it, and it may well now be sitting with an organisation that we will be perhaps passing on some of the Vivacity interests to, some of the Vivacity estate, because you know, we have where we are at the moment as a holding pattern with City College and with Aragon, but it doesn't mean to say the services are going to stay there forever. We are reviewing where we are, as my understanding, as portfolio holder responsible for this. So I think that the Lost World may have ended up somewhere where other things will end up as well. That's my overview.
I think that was mine as well, Steve. Just flagging it. Morning, Councillor Seaton. Thanks for joining us. You can have your hand up if you want to ask a question.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. It's appreciated. My apologies for joining slightly late. Couple of thoughts. One is I'm not quite clear where we are on the agenda, having joined late. Is this a separate?
Item 4, the transition for Vivacity.
Okay. Obviously looking at the wrong one. Apologies. You said there's no discussions with Cabinet.
Sorry about this particular thing, David. That was all. Just the one item.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I would have expected Steve to be Councillor Allen to be involved in those discussions, but I suppose one point for me is, you know, we had 2 members on the board who then resigned because of what was going on. Were there no discussions with the board about passing all the assets back to the council? Because I tend to agree with you. It seems slightly strange that we've been given this organisation £2 million a year, and then suddenly there's this argument that they shouldn't pass the assets back. And I would have thought that's something that the board of Vivacity could do. They could agree that actually we just want to pass everything back to the council.
Okay, Pete, do you want to comment? I mean, I have a view.
Yeah, no, certainly. As part of the negotiations, one of the questions we've asked and got a response over the last 3 weeks was, is everything coming back to the council, or is there anything not coming back to the council? And although there were discussions going on in parallel, we only got an absolute confirmation about things like Lost World about 2 to 3 weeks ago.
Okay, I don't want to labour the points in public. Perhaps it's more of a conversation in Cabinet, David, in terms of the detail. I'm slightly concerned the way that those discussions may or may not have taken place, etc. And as Steve alludes to, yes, there may be certain partners that things are going to that may want to do more. It's just I found it perverse in the sense that, you know, the board of Vivacity deliberately took a decision, it seems, to not do as you suggest, David, hand over the stuff, because when we started the contract, we passed everything over. But as Peter says, if there's some agreement that's been referred to that allows for these circumstances, then I'm sure that's been followed. But perhaps we could have a longer discussion in Cabinet about it at the appropriate point. Anybody else got anything to say? Otherwise, I'll move to the recommendation on page 9. If nobody's got anything to say. So we note and have commented today upon the progress being made to secure the safe transition of services from Vivacity, specifically referencing any points that need to be considered as part of the transition or following that transition, relating to other services overseen by the Shareholder Cabinet Committee. If everybody's in agreement, there's no need to say or do anything unless somebody raises a hand. I will take that as being the recommendation is approved and put forward as is. Okay, I think.
Yep, there are no hands raised, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I believe now we're going to move to item number 5. Just got to scroll through. The thing is about having all these things on computer, it just slows us down while we just move through the screens here. So item number 5, and I know I've seen your name somewhere, Mr. Cox. It is Steve Cox. And I think joining us also is Tom Hensey, the CEO of Opportunity Peterborough. So I don't know, I presume it's you, Steve. I can't see. Yeah. I assume you're here. In fact, yes, I can see. I am. There you are. Aha! You're in glorious technicolor.
Yes, the sun is shining on me, Dwayne. Yes.
Yes, you look anointed, by the way. Right. So if you want to introduce item 5 this morning, Steve, take it away.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fitzgerald. I'll just say a few words of introduction, and then Tom will take us through the report in a little bit more detail. So firstly, welcome, Tom. The report is an update on the activities and achievements of OP and goes into some detail on that. I think in looking at OP, there's a live question that I think members are.
Steve, apologies for interrupting. It's Councillor Sereste is waving at the screen.
I just wanted to say, Chairman, as agreed, I'm going to have to leave for a few minutes and rejoin the meeting as soon as possible.
You're on mute, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Marco. If you want to rejoin as soon as you can, we are still for it now. With
I will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Carry on, Steve.
Thank you. I was just alluding to the live question that we have about the council's continuing support for OP, and I think that the paper paints a very strong picture of what OP has achieved. And there's a couple of points just to put in mind, I think, in thinking through that. One is as we come out of, hopefully come out of the lockdown and the COVID restrictions, the economic impact is something we're aware of. A strong economic development function will continue to be important for the city as we go through economic recovery, and that of course is one of the fundamental underpinnings of what OP is doing. The second, I think, is then what job growth and getting people into work can do in terms of the preventative agenda, and we know that people in work reduces their dependency and delivers better health outcomes. So ensuring that we have a strong economic development function in the city, helping people to get into work and creating jobs is an important part of the future of the city. The question, I think, then is what role can OP continue to play in delivering that? And I think the paper sets out the successes and track record of OP in the recent period. I can happily answer questions along with Tom towards the end of the item, but if I hand over to Tom now, just to take us through the highlights in the paper.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, councillors. So yes, as Steve has given a very good overview there, the report basically gives a review of the 2019-20 year, as well as a bit of an introduction to the business plan for this financial year, 2020-21, and has highlighted some of our key 12 months or so. So within the 2019-2020 period, Opportunity Peterborough handled 35 inward investment inquiries on behalf of the region, and we worked with some of the major investors such as Urban, JTA Travel, and reinvestments of existing investors such as Coloplast as well. We were doing this obviously on behalf of Peterborough City Council, but we were also delivering a 12-month inward investment pilot on behalf of the Combined Authority, covering Peterborough, Fenland, East Cambridgeshire and Huntingdonshire as well. And I think that again really speaks to the high regard in which Opportunity Peterborough team is held in with regards to the delivery of these functions. Within the year as well, we were also successful in securing providing a successful bid for £715,000 of seed funding to start a smart manufacturing association for the area. We're still working with the Combined Authority on the establishment of a joint venture around that, just looking at the shareholder agreement details at the moment. But that was something that was highlighted both within the SPEAR report and the local industrial strategy as something that was much needed for the area, and it's been something that I've been very passionate about as well, as it's a sector that's vital for our economy and is supported at the moment. So very much looking forward to bringing that online a little later in the year with any luck. We've also been working obviously with Peterborough City Council and Combined Authority and other partners with regards to the response to COVID-19, certainly both in the very early days and its immediate impact, and supporting the council with regards to the business grants services, as well as dissemination of vital information to the business community. And obviously we also operate the skills service, which actually accounts for about half of our team. Over the 2019-20 period, they engaged and supported over 34,000 young people across the 5 districts that we serve, helping to introduce them to employers and increase knowledge of careers pathways, and helping them to develop employability skills and generally raise aspirations within our young people through that education. Program called Inspire Your City, which started pre-COVID and was about engagement with schools, getting them looking at innovation challenges around using the amazing digital infrastructure that we've got in Peterborough and how that can be utilised to support the city to become more sustainable. Since COVID, obviously the schools closed down prior to the summer holidays, and we've developed that somewhat. It's become a lot more virtual, but that's actually enabled us to engage a wider range of partners and look at rolling this out nationally through City Fibre and their network as well. And so that's coming on leaps and bounds, and look forward to being able to share more information with you on that specific subject in the future. Across the year 2019-20, Opportunity Peterborough, just through our inward investment work alone, of 338 jobs, which gave additional GVA or economic output uplift of around £10 million to the local economy. Looking at the amount of funding that we received from Peterborough City Council, that's a return on investment of £101 additional GVA for every £1 economy. So hopefully that's viewed as a very worthwhile investment on the behalf of the council. Opportunities that we're looking at the moment, and something that the team has been working very hard on for the last 6 months or so, is bidding for Combined Authority business growth service contract, where it shall actually it will replace some of the contracts that we currently have in place, such as the 12-month inward investment pilot and the skills service contract that we've been delivering for the last 6 years on behalf of the LEP, and then latterly the Combined Authority. It's a 3-year contract covering the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Total value is around £32 million. We're in the final stages of that process at the moment. Obviously, if we are successful, then that will give us a fantastic foundation with which to increase our impact for Peterborough and the wider economy. And so we're very much looking forward to seeing how that pans out. Obviously, there are some concerns and risks with regards to the fact that if we're unsuccessful and it is replacing a number of our existing contracts, that could be a quite considerable reduction in income for the company, in which case we've got a reserve business plan and we'll be putting that into place. I think regardless of whether we're successful within that bid itself, Opportunity Peterborough provides a wide range of services to Peterborough City Council that actually would sit outside of what would be paid for through that contract. And I think this just speaks to the issue that obviously Opportunity Peterborough has been asked to become a more commercial organisation, understandably reducing its financial draw and reliance on Peterborough City Council. But with it being a very commercial contract, it would mean that if at some point in the future it was decided that Peterborough City Council would have to reduce or withdraw funding from Opportunity Peterborough, some of those services could no longer be provided. I thought that would be worth raising with the committee this morning. Within the report, I've highlighted a number of services that we do provide that obviously wouldn't fall under the combined authority contract. So this is regards to activities such as putting on the Thomas Cook jobs fair when that was needed at very short notice, the running of the bondholder network, which is a fantastic channel for business engagement that can be utilised by Peterborough City Council. We represent Peterborough on some of the strategic groups. What's particularly important at the moment are the Combined Authorities Economic Recovery Subgroup and the Mayoral Forum, both of which have been put together in the light of the COVID pandemic and looking at the economic recovery around that. So there's a certain amount of expertise that we bring to that, representing Peterborough and its specific needs and requirements. Also responding to strategic consultations on behalf of the city, such as the National Industrial Strategy, the Combined Authorities Local Industrial Strategy and their skills strategy, ensuring again that the needs and requirements of the city are fully recognised within those. We've also been instrumental in the reopening of the city centre. I know this has been a cross team, multi-partnered effort, but I think that talking to a number of the officers that have been involved in that from Peterborough City Council would give a good understanding of the role that Opportunity Peterborough has played there, not just from a communications perspective, but also operationally with regards to getting a lot of this, doing the engagement with retailers and getting signage together to enable the reopening of the city. So a whole wide range of services that we do currently provide, and I would very much hope are valued, and we would be able to continue to provide into the future with continued funding. We've always had a very strong relationship with the City Council, and I think that a lot of other local authorities can look at us quite enviously because of the setup that we have. Having a slightly arm's length organisation means that we can take a small amount of funding, or relatively small amount of funding from the Peterborough City Council, and really expand and multiply on that, delivering a much larger team to have much greater impact in the city. And it gives us a certain amount of agility as well in able to respond and work with the business community in ways in which they're used to and respect. So just giving you an update really there on what we've been up to and what the current situation is for Opportunity Peterborough, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Members, so we've got Councillor Seaton still and Councillor Allen. It's just I can't see them all on the screen, but they are there, I know. So Councillor Allen then has put his hand up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Tom, thank you for the report. I haven't had a chance to read the notes in depth, having just returned from holiday, but reading them whilst you were giving the presentation, something did come to mind, that you have lost the contract to provide services to South Holland District Council, but you're also saying you've lost 2 members of your economic team, so you couldn't have really done it anyway. Am I reading that correctly? And are you going to recruit more members of your economic development team so that we can then look for new customers to replace South Holland? I hope I've understood what the papers are saying. Perhaps you could clarify.
I'd have to have a look at that in detail. I'd say at present we haven't lost a contract for South Holland District Council. I think it was more of a reference to the fact that should we be unsuccessful in securing the combined authority contract, then depending on what avenues were pursued and the overall general outcome of that process, it may well be that a number of our team are 2P because obviously they're covered by existing combined authority contracts. At that point, we would have a reduction in resources, which might mean that it would be difficult to service other contracts such as the South Holland District Council contract. We would have to obviously look at re-recruiting in those circumstances, unless we were able to convince those members of the team to stay with us. But we'd also have to have a look at what our remaining income was and whether that was sufficient in order to be able to re-recruit as will be required.
Okay, if I can just come back, is it a policy of Opportunity Peterborough to indeed take on board further projects outside its core service to Peterborough City Council? Is that the sort of the mission?
It is, yes. I think for two reasons. One, in that particularly in servicing the wider economy, you know, the functional economic area that could be described as Greater Peterborough, going beyond the local authority boundaries of Peterborough, actually supports the Peterborough economy itself as well, as it is a functional economic area that doesn't necessarily respect those boundaries, and particularly as well looking at the work of the skills service, obviously, as well. That's about raising aspirations within the talent pool that serves that broader economic area as well, which obviously Peterborough businesses will benefit from. So there's a very good strategic reason for doing that. But also from a financial perspective, of course, we receive the grant funding for funding from Peterborough City Council of around 140,000 a year at the moment, but our overall turnover last year was around 850,000 and has been as high as just over £1 million in the past, which gives us a scale that means that we can have more impact. But it's also part of the more commercial self-sustaining organization that could potentially at some point continue without Peterborough City Council funding. I think what I've been keen to emphasize in this session is that that's all well and good, but there are actually some things that if we're not getting investment from Peterborough City Council, there are services that, should we be operating on a purely commercial basis, that we would no longer be able to provide. And certainly from my perspective, I would suggest that they're very valuable services that the City Council benefits from the expertise that we have in the team that will cost a lot more should you have to go to market for that, or I don't think you'd get the same benefit necessarily if the same amount of money was invested in a much smaller internal team. You wouldn't be able to have that kind of multiplier effect of that investment.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Seaton, please.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Thank you, Tom. It may be that officers can guide me on this, but when I look at this report, and Tom has just touched on this, under financial implications, it basically says the recommendation is the continued funding of Opportunity Peterborough activities. When I look at the recommendations at the top of the report, the shareholder committee is asked to, I don't see anything that says continue that funding. Now, I sit on Opportunity Peterborough Audit Committee. I have a lot of time for OP, and I have a lot of time for you, Tom. I think you're doing a good job. But we've had discussions about OP becoming self-sufficient, and you know, we're working towards the 21-22 budget. MTFS cabinet, it will go through council, and I'm a little bit confused by this report, where in one place it says we're agreeing to give them the money for next year, and then in the top main recommendations, it doesn't touch on it, and perhaps officers could explain that to me.
My apologies for any confusion there, Councillor Seaton. I think perhaps it's been poorly worded, and certainly something that I can look at improving on in future reports. I think it was more the case that I was trying to put over to the committee the current value that is received by the council from Opportunity Peterborough, and therefore raising that as a something to consider when potentially looking at future budgetary decision making, rather than necessarily for any decision to be taken within this committee. That certainly wasn't my intention.
Tom, I can eat your pain here a little bit, don't worry. Councillor Seaton's right. I know if you want to come back in, David, in a second. I think what the job of this committee is we can add to that recommendation to clear it up a little bit. I mean, it's ambiguous enough to say that, you know, it could be taken as read that we consider the benefits of Opportunity Peterborough, and in the business plan, you know, it's stating a line of funding. But I think from our point of view, the council, the cabinet, need to decide, and we could take a formal decision to continue to support OP in the way that we've done, because the council, we must decide what we want in terms of economic input and function from OP or something else. And I don't think we've had that conversation recently as cabinet. So I'll put a suggestion to amend the recommendation. But Steve Cox, I don't know if you're going to say the same thing. Do you want to come back in?
Yeah, essentially, Wayne, it was the same thing. I think we recognise absolutely, as you've said, that members would want to look at the support that you would wish to give to Opportunity Peterborough alongside very many other decisions that have to be taken on the budget. I think at this point, it's the report is about putting to you what OP has achieved, which you'll hopefully consider as we look at budget choices going into 21-22.
Is there anybody else? If not, I've got a couple of summing up comments, but that's about it. Okay, so just building on what I was just talking about, I think without doubt, Tom, even prior to you, and I would agree with David, you know, we all respect and note the work that OP and yourself does, and your predecessors. The situation is a changing feast, as it were, that we didn't have a combined authority. We didn't have the circumstances that we're all facing in terms of the financial constraints and the investment issues, that perhaps the milk and honey is not flowing as well as it was previously. However, I do think we, the council, need to revisit again with officers' input, and Steve, that may be you, about what the future holds for our economic investment, shall we say, choices. Is OP still the right vehicle for us? I mean, I think it is. So one could take as read from within the notes, Tom, and from the continued funding is envisaged in the current climate. What concerns me slightly is the reference to uncertainty, which is way. But I think as this, to remind everybody, is a wholly owned subsidiary of the City Council from a business perspective, I think we need probably monthly updates, because I'm reading that there is so much what's and maybes about opportunities, and whether they come forward or don't come forward could have a serious financial impact on the running of OP, regardless of council funding or no council funding. Because you're talking about, you know, that smart manufacturers, you're talking about all different types of contract, which none of them at this point seem to be firm, unless there is, you know, I could ask you, Tom, how, you know, 1 out of 10, how sure are you of getting the things that you refer to in your plans, both in the exempt annex for members and the overall plan? So I'll stop there. I'll give you a chance just to respond to that point, because you may have some more certainty than perhaps is being indicated in the papers.
I think with regards to the Smart Manufacturing Association, certainly something that the Combined Authority want to see happen, as does Opportunity Peterborough and our board members. And so I would put a fairly high level of certainty on that happening. We're just at the moment negotiating the terms of the shareholder agreement. Obviously, once that is finalised, then we can look to venture and progress from there. The funding for the Smart Manufacturing Association, just to be clear, would obviously be going into the joint venture as opposed to Opportunity Peterborough, although we would be contributing staff and then cross-charging for their time. So that would be an income stream still for the company. With regards to the Combined Authority, I think it's an ongoing process. We are due to find out in the very near future more clearly how that will progress. I would hesitate to put any kind of certainty on that at the moment. It's very much a two-horse race, I'm led to understand. But there are all sorts of outcomes that could come from that, depending on what the decisions are. So uncertainty around that is still pretty high, I would say.
Okay, well, hence my point about keeping this committee particularly. One of the criticisms, I've got both Councillor Seaton and Steve Allen putting their hand up, but one of the criticisms, and again, I'll raise it, I think I told you before, is the level of communication between OP and councillors. Because if I speak for myself, you know, I see you now and again, but I have no real idea what's going on in OP. I don't know. So I don't know whether you need to brief councillors or certainly cabinet on a more frequent basis, even if it's just once a month, to say, you know, these are the things we've been doing, because we can lose track or sight of you. And it might be that Councillor Holditch and Councillor Hill are on the board, but with all due respect, they don't necessarily convey that to the rest of the team. And that's not deliberate or a criticism. I'm just saying, perhaps, you know, you might want to give some thought to that. Which will also keep us up to date, really, because I think from the point of view of our responsibility with partners such as yourself, you know, I would want to know from a positive point of view, you know, if you do get that good news or situation changes, you know, how well we're doing. The other thing is, you know, let's not beat about the bush. I will now call James Palmer, and the way of the world is that, you know, political, shall we say, I'll use the word lobbying rather than pressure, but I want to fight our corner for Peterborough. So you should use people like me and others that have those relationships with those people, and use every tool we've got. I'll shut up because David Seaton had his hand up. David, do you want to come in? You were first.
I've actually put my hand down since, but I would support that. I think sometimes we can be a little bit blasé because we're directly involved with OP, myself and Councillor Holditch, Councillor Hiller. I'm on the audit committee, but I think it's a fair point, Tom, about keeping councillors more widely informed. And there's so much information in here. I think that would be a great thing to do. Just going back to what you were saying, Councillor Fitzgerald, about the likelihood of some of these contracts, I think in my time working with OP, I've seen us move from a situation where maybe you've got slightly longer term agreements on funding to a situation now where quite often it's a 6 month or 1 year agreement. So on the audit committee, I'm sure on the board as well, we do have regular discussions with Tom about the likelihood of funding coming in, and we track that quite closely, Tom, I think it's fair to say. So we constantly understand the overall position for OP in terms of those funding streams. That's something we do on a regular basis at audit committee for OP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Steve, Councillor Allen, you have your hand.
Thank you, Chair. Tom, we talking about communication. I'll pick up on what Councillor Fitzgerald mentioned. We did have a conversation because I wanted to find out information. So I think certainly accessibility I can't knock. But during the meeting we had, we addressed tourism and selling the city to visitors. Now I think Peterborough are doing a great job marketing the city for inward investment. Could always do better, but it's doing a great job. But how are we squeezing the economic value of tourism? I understood when we met that that was something you were taking on board and we're going to develop, but I don't see it in this vision that you put in the report.
No, there is more detail within the business plan with regards to that. It's still something that we are very much looking to pursue. I think it would make a lot of sense for Opportunity Peterborough to transition to more.
Oh, have we lost
Tom? I think you've lost him. I'll go. Oh, there we are.
Oh, no, he's back again. You're back again, Tom. Try again. Sorry, you went off.
Yes, so something we're very much, very keen to pursue. I think there's a lot of sense in Opportunity Peterborough taking on a place marketing role for the city rather than purely focusing on inward investment, and that would involve taking on the promotion of the city from a visitor economy perspective, but also business tourism and talent attraction, and therefore kind of replicating some of the models we see from London and Partners or Marketing Manchester, Marketing Edinburgh, who've brought these streams together. And there's a lot of value to be gained from that, and a lot of cross messaging as well, which reinforces the inward investment and visitor economy angles as well. We have had conversations with the City Council about transferring ownership of the Visit Peterborough website, and we've had very positive conversations there. I think overall, COVID-19 has had a major impact on that, with visitor economy, leisure, tourism, retail, all those sorts of sectors and subsectors being some of the most hard hit and the ones that had to close down. So engagement on that area has reduced quite radically over the last 6 months. But I think now that we're starting to come out of that, we're looking to pick up those conversations again. So certainly something, as I say, we're very keen to pursue, and something that we would be looking to use the Combined Authority Business Growth Service contract to build upon, should we be successful in that. But if not, then there are other means that we can pursue that as well. And very happy to have conversations with members and other officers with regards to that and making that a reality.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised from members or officers. So, Tom, in summary, given where we are in terms of the report and your exempt business case, and I'll say it's exempt because it has sensitive and commercial numbers in there, which would make it exempt, but there's an acknowledged understanding of the risks, like there is every year, but perhaps more acute than it's ever been this year, that perhaps you could keep us informed, certainly this committee, on a bi-monthly basis, but as often as you can, really, because I think so much hangs, in the next 6 months or so. Because when is your year end? Without me going back to that report, Tom, when's your
end of March?
Yeah, end of March. So yeah. So we've got some 6 months or so ish, and in order to meet your business plan, it would be good to be kept in touch. What I will do, Pippa, is, if possible, at item 4, if we could reword this, if members are agreeable, that we recommend to Cabinet to consider the continuing benefits of Opportunity Peterborough as a valued asset, which will reconfirm Cabinet's commitment to OP, thus its funding, which will come up in our budget discussions. And Peter, if that's correct, you'll just shake your head, because that line will be in the budget. And if we are committing to supporting OP as we've always done, then that will just go through on the normal course of business. And then pursue the potential, Pippa, pursue the potential to share costs and service outcomes with neighbouring authorities such as Cambridgeshire County Council and South Stephen District Council as examples. Would that be fair, folks, if everybody's happy with that? If not, put your hand up. I think, Pippa, you probably captured that. I spoke slowly enough. Other than that, the item, the recommendations are as follows, 1 to 4 with that amendment, which you can find on, I don't remember what page it is now. It was there a minute ago. I think I probably put the page down. Just page 13. I've got so many bits of paper in my room here. By the way, I'm not allowed to print anything. It's my own expense because I'm following the agenda on the laptop. The recommendations I've just printed out. So there we go. So they're on page 13 as amended. If everybody's happy, Pippa, I can't see anybody that's not. Raise your hand if you're not in agreement. If you are in agreement, we'll take that as read.
Yeah, there are no hands raised, Chairman.
Okay, lovely. So if we could pass those through as amended, that would be great. Okay, so moving swiftly on then, item number 6, which I'll just have to scroll down again on my laptop. Forgive me a second, folks. I'll just move the papers out of the way. And Tom, oh, thank you, Tom. If you want to go, by the way, I mean, I'm sure you want to sit here and listen to all the wise words from the team here, but thanks for your time, Tom. If you want to get on and get some more inward investment for the city, please feel free to do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, councillors.
Right, nearly there, folks. Oh, well, there isn't. I've got to go through all the items. But Fiona, is this you, Fiona? The next item?
Yes, thank you. It was just to confirm that when you set up your terms of reference, you agreed to look at the guidance on an annual basis.
I noticed.
And there's no change, so really.
So that was guidance for members and officers who serve on outside bodies. The officer has reviewed that guidance and has confirmed, as she's just said, no update is needed and the guidance remains the same. I'm just trying to get to, there's so many bits of paper on this OP last item. So Steve, you wouldn't have even got to it, Steve, even if you hadn't been on holiday. There are lots and lots of pages. So I'm just moving to the last item here, which is the work program. Here we go. So obviously today's meeting, we just covered the first item there, Vivacity and Opportunity Peterborough. And I can't, just while we're on that, we didn't actually say when we wanted an update on Vivacity, Pete Carpenter. So just while we're talking about it, is this going to be in 3 months' time post the transfer? So when's our next meeting? December, Pippa?
I suggest we have an update at the next meeting, Councillor.
That is December, I'm pretty sure, isn't it?
Just looking.
It's November 9th.
Oh, no, November 9th. Will that be too soon, do you think?
I think that should be
well,
about...
well, again, I suppose we can have a short report if members agree about post-transfer, because presumably it would have happened by then.
Yes.
So if we have an update, which is just a state of play at the time, because I can't see what we'll know in 2 months. I could be wrong. You could surprise us all. And OP, again, Steve, I don't know your views on, obviously, I did say that perhaps, and you can make sure it happens, Steve, that the OP work, because I think it's financially sensitive, that if they do, where are they going to be in the 6 months if they don't make those, contracts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Fitzgerald. I think there's probably 2 parts to it. One is, as updates to those contracts come in, we should keep the committee informed, particularly the combined authority one, I think is particularly important. So that can be ongoing. And I would suggest that there is a date actually to the November meeting to take stock of what's happened between now and then.
Okay, in terms of, I don't know, do we take this forward to a budget meeting, Pete, or do we take it to a Cabinet Policy Forum agenda item? I don't think it'll be a very long discussion because it's just reconfirming a commitment to supporting OP, and the financing of it, Pete, is your problem.
Yeah, no, so it'll be a line item in budget CMT.
Okay, is everybody happy with that? Yeah, okay. So that deals with what we've dealt with today. So on the work plan going forward, Peterborough Museum and Art Gallery, again, that will form part of that post-Vivacity transfer work, presumably. Yeah. The NPS update with business plan. Again, just for members' note, there's been continued rumblings about the, shall we say, effectiveness of NPS. So both from the leader down and elsewhere. So I was just going to say that at that update, and it was noted last time there wasn't a business plan, somebody might want to give some thought to addressing those things. That's all I'll say for now. But I have to say to you that that was the same last time, and you know that kind of disquiet or concerns continue, both from a senior management level and some members. So I don't know, Pete, if you want to tackle that, because I know Gillian will have spoken to you about it.
Yeah, no, and we are at the moment doing another questionnaire like we did last year.
Okay. The Peterborough Limited update. Again, Steve, will that now incorporate the Vivacity issues? Do you think? Will it come under that? Because in effect, Vivacity won't exist, will it? From our perspective, so it will be an update on them, including the work that Vivacity was previously handling. Will it come under that for that November meeting?
I think we should look to do that. A lot will depend on the progress made, but I think that's going to be an important, very important part of Peterborough Limited's work going forward, certainly in the interim. So I think that can be incorporated within the wider update from Peterborough Limited.
Well, I'm just slightly concerned also because the scope of work for Peterborough Limited, both in terms of waste, what we're doing about waste and vehicles and all those other things, I would expect that we might have an update on that, because you know I run into various people that tell me how poor condition the fleet is in, and we did discuss in some detail last time about what we were going to do about that. So I'd expect a clearer view of what the future holds on that. Members, is there anything else that we can recall, David? I don't know if you can, or Steve, from those Aragon Peterborough Limited discussions, particularly around the excluding the stuff they will be taking on. So I know that the fleet and waste, as I just said, was there anything else? Oh, business opportunities and development, where we are with that, because again, it talked in their business plan, if you recall, about scope for improving or increasing the level of commercial income other than the council. Again, so that was the, if anybody else has got anything to add to that, that was just my recollection without reading the minutes. So those I would expect to see, and a you know, performance against business plan as it was. Because just remind me, is the Vivacity stuff going, it's under the umbrella of Peterborough Limited, presumably it's not separated out? Pete, anybody, do you know?
Correct.
Okay, fine. So that will have to be factored into the mix for the time being. So, okay, but they can separate it out, I'm sure.
Just to say, Councillor, the Vivacity stuff will be split two ways. So you'll see the leisure under PL and the culture under City College.
Yeah, no, yep, got all that. So is there anything else that anybody wants to add to the work programme? Suggestions, comments from officers and or members?
Chair, if I can just come in, I've got my hand up. I think we do want to clarify to the public, and it doesn't really matter that much, but I think the perception that the people who collect the bins are now going to run our leisure centres, we do need to make sure the public are aware that it's Peterborough Limited running that aspect of the Vivacity estate rather than Aragon. Nothing wrong with Aragon, but public perception is all, isn't it?
Well, look, let's be perfectly clear and nail this here and now. It is the same team working for Vivacity that will now be employed by Peterborough Limited. So nothing has changed, just the name on the bank account if you pay by direct debit like I do. So the public should see no difference in terms of the quality of service that they receive from Vivacity services or former Vivacity services when they transfer. It's just the name on the bank, as I said, and the name from an employee's point of view, it's the name on the payslip. Hence the conversation earlier about changing it at the end of the month rather than indeed halfway through the month. Now, with that, I don't think there is anything else. Pippa, are we all done? I think you're telling me yes.
No, that's it. Yep.
Okay, so the date of the next meeting is November the what? Just remind me again, it was what?
9th of November.
And again, hopefully we might even be in person, you never know. But that's it for this morning. Thank you, members, for joining us. Thank you if you're listening or watching online. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you all again soon, and bye-bye for now.